bit of beeswax, but you have to kind of like, you know, warm it up. Yeah. Okay, so first step always is to cut straight the end, because that's going to be 50% of your seam, right? So I'm going to line myself up nice and straight, like we were talking about before. Cutting straight is all about posture. Okay, so I'm just trimming a tiny little thing off. Okay, I got my stones stuck down. The most important premise when you're doing a stone with corners and things like that is, like we were saying before, don't go on to the next bend until the first bend is exactly right. If you go on and then you go back and try to fix things, everything that you fix will affect everything else, and you're like a dog chasing your tail. You're around and around and around and around, and you never get there. Okay? So, I also like to use chain nose pliers. People like to use those parallel ones, and I find in general they're way too big, they're way too clunky, way too uncontrollable to get a nice effect. So, I'm going to look at this. I'm going to make my first bend with my finger, because you notice this is a soft bend. This is not like a hard 90-degree kind of thing. So I'm going to do this.
But now you have to make sure, because those pliers are on an angle, like a triangle that you're...
Not for me, they aren't. I'll tell you why. What I do is I line it up with the left. I use, in other words, I do it like that. Do you see what I'm saying? So the left side is straight up and down. And that way it serves the purpose of being straight, but you've got a nice narrow tip to be able to get in there and deal with it. Okay? So bend a little bit, and I'm going to put it up against my stone, and I'm going to look at it. Now that corner is actually even a little more rounded than what I've done. So a lot of times what I do, in my extreme naughtiness, is take a larger pair of round nose pliers and soften it. You'll get your bend, you know? Okay? And then you always want to, here's another thing that people always forget to do, and it's some kind of weird human problem we have, that people always try to work not under their nose.
What do you mean?
Whenever I go to sit and help somebody, their work is always like, let's say I'm you know what I mean? It's always like here, 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 here. You always want to, Kathleen and I fight weekly on this. When you sit down to work, you pause, and you should be able to, and there it is. It's literally directly under your nose, because you can't see, you don't realize maybe you can't see, but you can't see what's happening with your bezel unless you're directly over it. And even this, because I'm short, I'm going to stand up. Now if I look at that first bend, to me, I see no space, it looks like a nice fit, everything is groovy, right? I'm going to step to the side and let you look at it, and when you feel satisfied, we're going to go on to the next bend, okay? Sliding back. Okay. You see what I mean? Like it has to be the same curve, you know, right up against there. And you notice also, use your fingers. It's not that you're not using your tools, but sometimes people get too like squish, 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 and then you're getting a lot of marks on your stuff. It's good, you know, this is not hard metal. It's a 22 karat or fine silver, whatever, you know. Love it a little bit. Finesse it a little bit. Okay, now, how do I know where to make my next bend? Should I measure it? Fuck that shit.
It's a technical term.
It is. You can.
It's a jeweler's term.
It almost never works because the side of the stone is rarely straight, and it just all becomes this big aggravating thing. What I do, low tech but effective, take a Sharpie, but you could just also use a scriber or whatever. Stand over it and put a little mark right where, directly across from where your bend, which actually starts up a little here, needs to be. Okay? And this is the kind of thing you have to do over it. You know what I mean? You can't be kind of sitting in front of it and doing it. So take a look. This is my foolproof method. Works every time. I move the bend up a little bit because that bend is funky.
And you know that I used the Sharpie color to match the stone. That was orchestrated.
As well.
Did we doubt that for a second? Never. Okay. Yeah, it's beautiful. So when I pick it up to bend it, do I put my pliers on the mark? No, I put it on the right of the mark. So what that means is this: if I
That's a
grab,
round one.
that is correct, and we've got a rounded corner. I could use, if this was straighter, I would probably go to the chain nose, but in this case, I'm going to use this. Take my finger, bend it around, try it up against the stone. Oh, look, the corner is right where we want it. Oh, okay. But I mean, like, if you look at it, it needs to be tweaked a little bit. Obviously, you know, this is not like you only get one try at it. But what you will find is that using this method, you will get a beautiful, tight fit. And you just work your way around. Whether you go clockwise or counterclockwise, doesn't matter, but pick a direction. Do you know what I'm saying? First one, the second, you know, and then when you get to the end, we'll mark it. So what I will say for you, do this corner. If you want, I'll do the last corner for you, and I'll show you how to mark it, you know, and cut it to get it the right length. Or you want me to just do the whole thing? All right. Oh, and you know, another really important tool for making bezels is the lowly dowel.
Well, that's what I call it.
The noble dowel.
Yes. Yes, the noble dowel. You're right. I'm going to start calling it that because it's hard enough to move the metal, but it won't leave a mark. Why don't I want marks? Because I don't feel like fucking cleaning them up.
Another technical jeweler's term.
That's you know. So now I look at this. I've got no spaces. Life is good. I'm going to hold this against here. I'm just pushing with my finger. I'm going to mark.
This page.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to mark where my corner needs to be with my little Sharpie mark, right? I'm going to grab to the right of the mark. I'm going to make a bend. Try it up again. This is why I normally just start with a little short end like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But try it on here. Just going to straighten this guy out. Bend him up. I'm going to look over the top, but that fits really nicely. You can take a look at it if you want.
I trust you.
All right. Excellent. I'm going to mark my next bend.
You're going to demonstrate using it closed?
If you want. If you guys want to see some 22 karat fusing, which is very similar, but just a little bit different than doing it in fine silver.
Yes, please.
I can do that. And I'm just kind of tweaking these corners because you see these corners. These are not regular, you know. This is a couture bezel. We're making it to fit the stone exactly.
Couture bezel.
Yeah,
I like
baby.
that.
Can it be a bespoke bezel?
It can.
That too. Bespoke couture.
Oh yeah, that's
Couture.
it. That's it, baby.
That's a thing, right?
Bespoke couture.
Yeah. Redundant? It's fine.
Almost.
A little bit,
Might
but
actually mean something
We'll
else.
take all the things.
yes, all the things.
And Jeanette, what gauge is that?
This is 26 gauge, which is what we generally use for bezels. So you see I've got a little extra space there because this is so curved, so I'm going to adjust that. Because I want my bezel just to go fit down over my stone and come back out. Not too tight that I've got to force it, and not any, you know, extra side to side wiggle action. A bit more, and then we'll be there. And then we'll mark it and cut it. You know, and also if you find you're doing some reshaping and things are getting aggravating, you can always pause and anneal your bezel. It's never going to hurt to soften it up again. I mean, in this case, we don't really need to, but. So what I'm going to do is because it tends to want to spring apart, right? So for marking that last bit, I'm going to hold it together. Okay, like so. I'm going to put a Sharpie mark right here, right where they would touch. Exactly. See that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Then I can just let go of it. I just pull it apart enough that I can get in there and cut. Remember, when you cut, feet on the floor. Okay. We pick up our gold off the floor. And then we're going to butt them together. Okay?
Ta-da!
Now this is the advantage also of screwing one bend at a time. I don't have to put this back over the stone and start screwing around with it again. Does it fit? You know what I mean? You do it once, and you butt the ends together, we'll fuse it shut, and then we'll have to kind of, you know, reshape it a little bit because it'll get distorted.
You also have to keep
the same side, if you've moved the stone, then you've got to make sure that you're moving the bezel right.
Yes, because this stone is a little irregular, so we'll definitely, when we go to solder this or fuse it down, we will double check we've got the right curves on the right side. What I usually do with the regular bezels, once I'm done fusing, is I figure out which side is the correct side and I only sand the bottom. There's a really easy way to make sure you don't get carried away on another day and solder it wrong side down.
Guess who did that the other day? This choker.